The cold Atlantic howled as John stood at the prow of the ship, his gaze fixed on the choppy waters. His heart, though burdened by the weight of the unknown, beat with the fervor that had carried him through countless nights of study, planning, and preparation. The ancient maps, the forbidden texts, all had pointed him here, to the edge of the world as Europe knew it. But John had glimpsed beyond that edge. He had seen the future, a new world where he and his followers could break free from the Vatican's iron grip. Land ho, came the call from the crow's nest, snapping John from his thoughts. He squinted against the rising sun, and there on the horizon he saw it, the promise of freedom. The dense forests of the new world stretched as far as the eye could see, an untamed wilderness waiting for them to carve out a new destiny. As the ship made landfall, John's followers, men and women who had left everything behind in Europe, gathered on the deck. They looked to him, their leader, with a mixture of awe and hope. He knew the gravity of their journey, the risks they had taken to defy the Vatican and build a new society across the ocean. John addressed them, his voice strong against the crashing waves. Today we stand on the brink of a new era, he declared. We are no longer subjects of the Vatican. Here in the new world we will create a society founded on freedom, knowledge, and the pursuit of truth. We will no longer be shackled by the old ways. Our children and their children after them will know a life free from tyranny. The settlers cheered, their spirits lifted by John's words, but he knew their challenges were just beginning. They had to build to survive, and above all, to defend themselves against the inevitable reach of the Vatican. John's joy at reaching the new world was short-lived. Only days after landing, as the settlers began clearing land and building shelters, word arrived from one of John's spies in Europe, a man who had remained behind to monitor the Vatican. The message was grim. The Vatican was aware of their departure and had already begun mobilizing forces to reclaim what they viewed as theirs. John's brow furrowed as he read the letter by the dim light of a lantern in his tent. The Vatican, enraged by his defiance, saw the fledgling settlement as a threat to their dominion over Europe. They were planning to send an expedition to the New World to crush the settlers before they could establish themselves. Time was short. John knew he needed more information to plan their defense. He needed someone he could trust to gather intelligence on the Vatican's plans. This someone, he realized, was his son, Jetty. Jetty was 18 years old, strong and cunning, but he was also a troubled soul. His mother's death when he was young had sent him spiraling into alcoholism, a crux that had only worsened with time. Despite his faults, Jetty was skilled in the arts of stealth and subterfuge, skills John had drilled into him from a young age, preparing him for a world of danger and deception. Late one night, John found Jetty in the makeshift tavern, a bottle of whiskey in front of him. The room was filled with the smell of smoke and sweat, the low hum of conversation droning on as the settlers unwound after a long day's work. John sat across from his son, expression serious. "Jetty," John began, "I need you to listen carefully." Jetty looked up, bleary-eyed but alert. He respected his father too much to ignore him, even in his drunken state. "The Vatican knows about us. They're planning something. I don't know what, but I can feel it. I need someone I trust to go back to Europe to gather information, to find out what they're plotting. That someone is you." Jetty blinked, the weight of his father's words sinking in. He had always known that one day his father would ask something monumental of him. Despite his faults, Jetty was a skilled spy, trained by his father in the arts of stealth and subterfuge. He was the only one who could do this. "I'll do it," Jetty said, his voice steady despite the alcohol coursing through his veins. "I won't let you down, Father." John nodded, relief and pride flickering in his eyes. "I know you won't. You leave at dawn." As first light, Jetty set sail back across the Atlantic, his mind sharp despite the remnants of drink. The voyage was perilous, but Jetty's resolve was firm. He would prove to his father and to himself that he was more than his weaknesses. Arriving in Europe, Jetty moved swiftly, using forged documents and disguises. He infiltrated the Vatican strongholds, slipping through the shadows to listen in on whispered conversations and stolen documents. The Vatican's plans were more advanced than John had feared. A fleet was being assembled with orders to sail at the first sign of good weather. They intended to obliterate the settlement and bring the survivors back to Europe in chains. Jetty knew he had to return to the New World immediately. With the intelligence he gathered, the settlers could prepare for the coming storm. He retraced his steps, evading the Vatican's agents at every turn, and once again took to the sea, racing back to warn his father. Jay returned to the settlement as the month drew to a close, haggard but triumphant. He was greeted as a hero, but he had no time to bask in their admiration. He went straight to his father, delivering the intelligence he had gathered. John took in the news grimly. "We must prepare. They will come for us." At night, John called a meeting of the settlement leaders. "We cannot wait for them to strike," he said. "We must strike first, but with strategy, not with brute force. From this day forward, we will establish the American Intelligence Center, the AIC. We will be the eyes and ears of the New World." The settlers agreed, and the AIC was born. Jetty, despite struggles, found purpose in his new role. Under John's guidance, the AIC began to build a network of spies, informants, and allies, both in the New World and back in Europe. They would gather intelligence, disrupt the Vatican operations, and protect their society from the shadows. As the final days of January 985 approached, the settlement braced for the Vatican's inevitable response. The settlers, once hopeful but naive, now hardened themselves for the coming conflict. They fortified their defenses, trained their fighters, and prepared for war. Jetty, standing alongside his father, knew the true battle was just beginning, but for the first time in his life, he felt ready. The New World would not fall, not while he and the AIC stood watch. The dawn of a new era upon them, and Jetty was determined to see it through. The New World would be free. They would fight to ensure it remained so.